This is lesson RI 6.2, Central Idea of a Nonfiction Text. Please make sure that you have the correct lesson. There's our RL 6.2. This is different because it's talking about nonfiction versus a story. We're going to start with our words to know. There are quite a few of them, so we're going to check out all of them at one time. The first thing that we need to know is topic, and a topic is what something is about. It's the biggest and broadest thing that you can say about a text. So for example, what did you read about? I read about cats. Cats is the topic. People often confuse topic with the central idea, and it's very important that from this point forward you don't confuse the two. Topic is very different than the central idea. Whereas topic is what something is about, the central idea is the most important point an author is trying to make. So for example, whereas the topic might be cats, the central idea would be that cats are a vicious pet to have. That's giving you a more specific point about what the author is trying to say. Today you also need to be familiar with what supporting details are. There are lots of different types of supporting details. Supporting details are facts, examples, stories, details, and other information that supports or explains the main idea. We use supporting details to back up our central idea. You also need to be familiar with the characteristics of a summary, specifically the characteristics of a nonfiction summary. In a nonfiction summary, you briefly restate the main ideas or the events in your own words. You always back this up with the supporting details. And an objective summary does not include any opinions. So I'm going to put in parentheses right here, objective. We would not include any opinions in an objective summary. That's something definitely to watch out for on your CAP exam. When we talk about central idea, there's a key strategy that we can use, and obviously we use the 2 W's to help us figure out the main idea, and then we can make a tree map with our 3 supporting details. So when I read a text, I like to find my 3 most important details first, and from there I go backwards and I identify the main idea or the most important point that the author is trying to make. Let's go ahead and continue with some practice. We'll start by reading this article and it's from Let's Collect Rocks and Shells, and it's by Shell Oil. Shell Oil I'm familiar with. That's a different gas station. I see it around town. So it's interesting that an oil company would write this article. Let's read it. Most shells of interest to the collector are found in the sea, but not all. Living forest mollusks have been found 18,000 feet high in the Himalayas. And in this country, a great variety of mollusks live in rivers, ponds, and even hot springs. Several species are peculiar to the Nile River. Also, species of mollusks live on land. For example, the common garden snail. Before I identify the main idea and supporting details of this article, I want to rule out the topic. Remember that a topic is what something is about. I think that if I said, what did I just read about? I read about shells. So this is not my main idea. This is just a topic. It's what I read about. To come up with my main idea, I'm going to begin by crafting my tree map. It's hard to do without my hand on the paper. And I'm looking for what are the 3 most important things that I learned when I read this. Well, first I see that living forest mollusks are found in the Himalayas. I think that's pretty interesting. So I'll say mollusks found in Himalayas. And those are really, really tall mountains. What else did I see? Okay, I also saw that mollusks live in rivers, ponds, and hot springs. So I'll put rivers, ponds, and hot springs. And lastly, I see that they also can be found on land, like a garden snail. All right. Notice that I didn't put that you can find mollusks in the Nile River because I see that the Nile River example is just elaborating on how they can be found in rivers. That's not a new idea. From here, I can determine the central idea. What did I read about here? Well, this was specifically about mollusks. Mollusks must be a specific type of shell. So my who in this case is mollusks. And what did I learn about mollusks? Well, they can be found in the Himalayas, they can be found or mountains, they can be found in rivers, ponds, and hot springs, and they can be found on land. This is a lot of different places that they can be found. I think that's the main idea. Mollusks can be found in many different places. Notice that this acts as an umbrella for each of my supporting details. All of these are directly connected to here, right? Notice that it's not just the first sentence, right? Most shells of interest to the collector are found in the sea, because these aren't examples of how they're found in the sea. These are examples of other places. Now I can take my tree map and translate it to these 3 questions. The first one says, what is the main idea of the passage? Well, we just found that. We said mollusks can be found in many different places. Okay, there's our central idea. Then our question asks, what is one detail that supports or explains the main idea? I can use any of these 3 details that I came up with. So I could say, for example, and then I'm going to give one of my details. My third question is asking me to put everything together, to summarize this passage. When I summarize the passage, I can simply talk off of my tree map. Here's how it would sound. In this article, I learned that mollusks can be found in many different places. For example, mollusks can be found high in the Himalayas. Mollusks can also be found in rivers, ponds, and hot springs. Lastly, you can find mollusks such as snails on the land. These are the different places that mollusks can be found. I just talked off my map so that I would be familiar with how to translate this into my summary. I'm going to write my summary and then share it with you. You can try to write your summary without my help and see how you do. All right, here's my summary. Follow along. Mollusks can be found in many different places. For example, they can be found high in the Himalayas. They can also be found in rivers, ponds, and hot springs. Finally, they can be seen on land. These are some of the different places you can find mollusks. You will be asked to write a paragraph like this on your CAP test. Notice how I included my main idea, my 3 supporting details, and a conclusion sentence. If you feel confident about being able to find the main idea and supporting details of a nonfiction text, you're ready to prove your mastery of this standard. In your mastery, you are just asked to answer 3 multiple choice questions, but remember that on your CAP test, you will be asked to write a full paragraph with the central idea and supporting details. Good luck on your proving behavior, and I hope that you enjoyed today's lesson. Before I forget, today's mystery item. Today's mystery item is a tiny pumpkin. Go ahead and write that down in your scavenger hunt, and then when you're ready, pick your next lesson.